Here is a question to keep in mind as we go through the contents of this video. In logistic regression, when applied to classification, on what basis is the predicted output label selected? Again, what is the basis used by our logistic regressor in order to decide which output label to assign or to predict? Logistic regression is often known as linear classification. This is because it is used to implement classification algorithms which are based on a machine learning approach. Let's see how this would play out using our favorite whales analogy. Whales, are they fish or mammals? This is the question that we wish to answer. We know that technically whales are mammals because they are members of a certain infraorder Cetacea, but a plausible case could be made that they are fish because they look like fish, swim like fish, and move with fish. Remember now that the rule based approach would be to pass specimens of a whale to a set of rules, and those rules would have been drawn up by a set of human experts. Those experts would know, because of their knowledge, that whales do belong to the infraorder Cetacea, and so they would classify whales as mammals. In an ML based approach, we would start with a large dataset called a corpus. We would pass this into a classification algorithm, and the output of this would be a trained ML based classifier. Notice how human experts did not play much of a role in this process. Because this is a purely mechanized process, we have to be careful about directing the attention of our classifier to the right attributes. If we told our ML based predictor that this is an animal which moves like a fish and looks like a fish, and that those attributes are what matter, most likely it would make the prediction that whales are fish. To prevent pitfalls like these, it's important to have a corpus of correctly labeled instances. Not only does that corpus have to be large, representative, and well labeled, it also should focus on the right attributes. So we are better off telling our classifier that this is an animal which breathes like a mammal and gives birth like a mammal. If we do all of this, we will hopefully get the correct answer that whales are indeed mammals. In any case, this was just a quick refresher of how machine learning and rule based classifiers differ. Let's now talk about how logistic regression can be used in classification. The basic idea should be quite familiar from linear regression. We start with a corpus, we pass it into the logistic regression algorithm, and the output from this algorithm is a nice logistic regression curve. The process of finding that curve involves finding the best fitting S curve, that is, finding the constants A and B that best fit the data. This is very similar to linear regression. As in the case of linear regression, the shape of the curve is already fixed. All that is carried out during this process is determining the constants which define that curve. Once we do have a curve like this, it's a relatively simple matter to give it feature vectors. For instance, maybe an animal lives in water, breathes with lungs, and does not lay eggs. Then our curve, which has already been fitted to predict probabilities, spits out a probability of 55%. That probability has been calculated by our classifier on the basis of that S curve because during the training process it was exposed to a wide range of animals. This S curve tells us that if an animal lives on land, it breathes with lungs, and does not lay eggs, then the probability of it being a fish is only 5%. Let's say it's at the other extreme, it lives in water, breathes with gills, and lays eggs, then it's almost certainly a fish. In the intermediate portion of the curve, the training data might have included animals like whales or duck-billed platypuses, special cases as it were, which share some but not all of the common characteristics of mammals. By plotting a line, an S curve to be precise, through all of these points, we can get a probability. If that probability works out to be less than 50%, then we will say that the animal is not a fish, i.e., it's a mammal. Here, because we are carrying out a binary classification, i.e., there are only two possible labels, if the probability is greater than 50%, then we can quickly assume that this is indeed a mammal. Things get a little more complicated if there are more than two labels, but that's easily taken care of in TensorFlow and using the softmax activation functions in neural networks. So that's it. That really is the basic idea of how logistic regression is used in linear classification. Find the probabilities of the different labels. The one which has the highest probability becomes your output or predicted label. And in case you're wondering why logistic regression is also called linear classification, that's because there is a special relationship between logistic regression and linear regression. That's what we are going to examine next in a bunch of detail. Let's now come back to the question we posed at the start of this video. When logistic regression is used in classification, we get as the output of the logistic regression a set of probabilities. We will get one probability for each possible output label. We will then go ahead and pick that output label which has the highest probability. In the case of binary logistic regression or binary classification, there are just two possible output labels, and so the probability which is greater than 50% is used to assign the output label.